City living includes all kinds of unexpected encounters, but it doesn't usually include having someone take up residence in your backyard. That is what happened to our next guest, giving Toronto homeowner Caitlin Sweet a glimpse into the world of those in this city who regularly navigate Ontario's very complicated mental health and shelter system. Caitlin Sweet is a novelist and creative writing instructor at the University of Toronto's School of Continuing Studies, and this week she wrote about her experience for our website, tvo.org. She joins us now for more. So nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, this is an unusual story, and your recounting of it on our website is really a great piece, so congratulations on telling it. Let's tell the story. Kevin. Who's Kevin?
Kevin, we wondered the same thing at the end of June when we started seeing a gentleman coming and going into the ravine next to our house. And you can see the image behind me is an image of that ravine and our fence. Many people come and go through this ravine in the summer. It's normal. We're used to it. But we noticed this guy came and went and came and went and stayed. And he, in fact, had set up camp across the fence from our backyard. He had a lot of things with him. We were often on the porch, and he started to talk to us as he went by.
And did you actually make a decision to get to know this guy?
We certainly weren't averse to speaking to him. He seemed fairly calm and collected and friendly.
Which he was sometimes.
Which he was initially.
But he wasn't always.
And certainly not always. But when we first spoke to him, he was chatty, and he told us about himself, and we learned quite a bit about his circumstances.
Was it apparent that he was suffering from mental health issues?
It was. I am not a professional. I in no way wish to diagnose him, and I continue to not know exactly what his diagnosis is. But it was clear that there was something going on, and we were wary, I suppose, to go back to your initial question. I mean, we didn't make a decision to help him, nor did we shut him out.
Did he ever ask to become a bigger part of your life, as in to move in with you?
He actually did ask to move in with us.
Did.
He did ask if we had a room, because the entire reason for his being in the ravine and not in a shelter and not in the apartment from which he had just been evicted was his cat. He had a cat.
With an odd name.
With a blueberry panda, and he explained the provenance of the name. Thought it was a blueberry pancake, a play on words. He'd had her for almost 10 years since she was a feral kitten, and there were no shelters that accepted pets, or so he and I thought initially. So he simply did not want to go anywhere without her. He asked if he could move into our basement and with her, because we already had many cats of our own, and that was the first boundary we officially set. Which was the no.
You said no.
That's right.
How hard was it to say no?
It was not difficult to say no. It's interesting in this whole experience. You learn where your boundaries are and when they shift and why. And the moving in boundary was absolutely, indisputably a no. But there were so many others through our encounters with him that did shift. That we start out saying, no, Kevin, we can't give you $20 more, but you do. We can't give you more tokens. You should buy your own. You have your own money. No, we would. You would say no, and then you would do it anyway.
But you did do that, right? You did give him money. You did give him tokens.
Yeah.
You tried to help.
We gave him a tent.
Gave him a tent.
Gave him a tent when it got buggy.
So he didn't have to live outdoors.
Well, yeah, he was outdoors in the tent.
Yeah.
And it helped him for months, actually, to continue living there until it began getting cold, and then things changed.
There is always this impossible to answer question about how much of what you do is just great Samaritan helping and how much of it enables a lifestyle that's unsustainable. Did you ever figure that out?
No, actually, and because all of those lines were so difficult to draw and to even observe, my real focus was trying to get him help.
What did help mean for you?
Help as he declined, as he deteriorated, and we could hear this. It was an audible deterioration over the months. So that by September, early October, he was yelling in the middle of the night. It was just blood-curdling, really upsetting noises. And we would ask him the next day, Kevin, what were you thinking? Oh, they were demons. Yeah, I was seeing demons, and when I yell, they go away. It was a very different Kevin we had seen earlier in the summer.
Did you have to call the police?
We did. We resisted and resisted and resisted. The first time he was taken away by police and paramedics, it was actually a city call. The city made the call. The second time, 2 weeks later, it was us. And that was difficult, but he was at that point in our backyard having a full-on episode. And it was the only thing we knew would get him to a hospital.
I was just going to say, you kind of became a bit of an expert on the Ontario mental health system as a result of your episodes with Kevin, because when the police pick him up. What do they do with him?
Well, they take him to a hospital that has space, first of all, in their ER, which apparently the night that they came the second time, they said, we know East General's full, we're just going to keep trying. They take him, he sits there and sits there and sits there and waits to be seen. And if by the time he is seen, the physician on duty determines that he's lucid and he's able to answer their questions, they let him go.
You could not commit him to a mental health facility,
No.
could you?
No.
Why not?
No. He was considered an individual with the ability to consent, because he was always able to answer those questions. And as I learned when I investigated the Ontario Mental Health Act, the criteria for involuntary admission are extremely stringent, and so they should be, as this is another conflicted thing. You don't want to be able to have someone committed to a psychiatric institution against their will. That is an extremely disturbing thought. However, when someone is legitimately ill and is refusing care, it's very, very difficult to get them that care.
But he had the right to refuse care. He had the right not to take medicine he didn't want to take.
That's right.
Was he on meds ever, do you know?
He was. He told us he was when we asked him, and he said, I guess I should get my prescription refilled. And Peter, when he was in the tent at the very end of his stay in the tent, before it was taken away, saw a variety of empty prescription bottles.
Peter, your
my
husband.
husband.
Yeah.
So we do not know, in fact, what the medication was, but he certainly had some.
You were very kind to a Toronto City Councillor whom you do not name because they were absolutely useless. And I guess a couple questions here. Why don't you name and shame here? Because this councillor, whoever it was, did not go to bat for you despite repeated attempts on your part to get him or her to do so.
Janet Davis.
Okay.
So East End. I've already said East End, so it's fair enough. Someone could find out. And she has been a delightful community supporter in so many ways. We do know her, and we have gone out on community cleanup days, and she was never in touch with me. Someone on her staff was, and she was very responsive. She was very quick to respond and said, oh my goodness, this is an incredible story. I'm so sorry. Thank you for what you're doing for this man. I am contacting the city. So in fact, I don't want to name and shame Janet Davis.
But you do say in the piece there was no follow-up.
No, that was it. There were two interactions by email with the staffer, and the city never did get in touch with me.
So what do you conclude from all of that?
It's easy. I've learned through this that it's very easy to leap to all sorts of extreme conclusions, like the Mental Health Act is the problem, the legislation is the problem, like city people don't care. But you know, now that I've spoken to a lot of people in the trenches, because I did for this piece, I spoke to mental health professionals of various stripes, and people who work with the city, and the system is incredibly overburdened. It's distressing, actually. The shelter system alone, which I also found out a lot about. So
it's packed to the gills, isn't it?
It's
everywhere, whether it's families, single men, single women.
It's 96, 97% capacity when it's supposed to only be 90, which still is quite high, actually. Yeah. And that's not taking into account the fact that there's an entire demographic of the homeless population who will not use shelters, who refuse.
Where's Kevin now?
Kevin is at a shelter. So when I said earlier that we had all assumed that no shelters in Toronto accepted pets with people, in fact, that was wrong. There is one. The Bethlehem United Fred Victor Shelter, Caledonia and Lawrence. And
West End.
West End, northwest of this, part of the city. And I, in desperation, Googled this one day. I thought, I'm just taking this on faith that there are no shelters that accept pets. And there's this beacon of a shelter that does. And I phoned, and this was at this point, Kevin was in our backyard much of the time. He had come back from that second 911 call quite quickly and was pretty much installed in our backyard. And I said, do you have a bed? And they said, no, but call every few hours, every day. And that's what I did, and there was a space as of November 2nd.
And he's content
And he
there?
and Blueberry Panda, his cat, are there.
Are there and content?
I think, yes, content in that they have a roof over their head, they're together. But it is very much a transitional situation. Right. And we saw him a couple of weeks ago and had a tour of the shelter, which is a remarkable place. It's stunning. But I am leery of being overly optimistic.
I'm going to ask a very odd question to finish this up with, and that is, do you miss him at all?
Oh, it's the oddest thing. Yes, it was so intense during those 4 months, constantly aware of this presence that was he would set fires, for example. Near the end, he was setting fires in the ravine. So on the one hand, there was a very visceral sense of dread. Coming home from work thinking, is our house still there? That there was dread, but at the same time, the empathy and the compassion and the fear I felt for him were quite genuine as well. And when he wasn't there, I was worried about where he was. So in a strange way, I do not miss his presence in the ravine, but I do wish I knew more about what was happening day to day with him still.
If people want to know more about Kevin's story, as told by Caitlin Sweet, they should go to our website, tvo.org, where it is all told. That's quite some story. Caitlin, thanks for coming in tonight and sharing your views on this.
Thank you so much.
The Agenda with Steve Bacon is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.